Hello, my name is Mohan Kelkar, and in this video I want to discuss the famous temperature hockey stick and its relationship to the population. Michael Mann of Penn State University in 1998 published a famous article in Nature magazine which showed the rise in the temperature over the last 100 years before past history. And this is a graph which shows a temperature history of Earth over last 1000 years. And compared to what has happened in the past, over the last 100 years, the temperature has risen by about 1 degree Celsius. When you look at the history of the temperature over the last 10,000 years, you can see that the temperature rise has happened in the past, but there's no doubt that the rapid rise in the temperature around last 50 years is very clearly evident in this particular graph. We can also compare the energy consumption in the last 10,000 years, and we can see that once the industrial revolution started and we were able to harness the fossil fuel, the consumption of energy has also increased very rapidly. And the energy consumption is here on the graph in terms of how much energy is consumed in the New York City per year. But we can also look at another hockey stick graph, which is the population growth. Humans struggle to increase the population for almost 10,000 years, and the growth was minuscule till we were able to harness the fossil fuel, and we were able to increase the population very rapidly in last 100 years. The population in 1800 was about billion people, and now our population sits at about 7.5 billion people. There is no doubt that there is a relationship between the fossil fuel consumption and the temperature rise. You can see in this graph that both provide that kind of a hockey stick graph. But what we cannot ignore is also even a stronger relationship between the energy consumption and the population. After the Industrial Revolution started, we were able to harness the cheap source which came in the form of fossil fuel. And as we started increasing the usage of fossil fuel, we were also able to increase the population. It is very difficult to imagine that the rise in the population could have happened without our ability to use fossil fuel. So before we start discussing using an alternate sources of energy and replacing fossil fuel with the alternate sources of energy, consider some of these questions. Is it possible that large population on Earth be sustained without availability of abundant fossil fuel? And based on the current technology, the answer is no. And the second question is, if indeed we stop using fossil fuel and rely on alternate energy sources, would that adversely impact not only the growth of population and ability to live for a large cross section of people on the earth? And the answer to that question, unfortunately, is that they will not be able to sustain their living without cheap source of fossil fuel. It is easy to discuss the climate change and the use of alternate energy sources and a rapid replacement of fossil fuel using these alternate energy sources. But when we look at the stark reality of how much population depends on the usage of fossil fuel, it is difficult to argue that rapid replacement of fossil fuel is desirable. Thank you for listening to my presentation. If you like the presentation, please subscribe to my channel.